No, but you said it's a prophecy. How can someone who is in a propheting bring forth a prophetic word? In the Gospel of John, he replied, the 11th chapter, the high priest Caiaphas is recorded as saying, it is necessary that one man should die for the people. It was the beginning of the plot that would end with the crucifixion of the Messiah, but it was something else as well. It was also a prophecy, namely that one man, Jesus, would die for the people to save them. Caiaphas wasn't a prophet. He was an ungodly man, and yet he prophesied. He wasn't a man, it was the office he held. He was speaking, as the gospel puts it, not of his own intimate initiative, but prophesying by virtue of his office as the chief representative of the nation. So the Senate Majority Leader was prophesying by virtue of his office. The Senate Majority Leader was the highest representative of America's highest representative body. By virtue of that office, he became their instrument to represent the nation, to speak on its behalf, to give voice to its response, and to deliver a prophetic word. So someone can prophesy without being a prophet. How does that happen? The word is inspiration. When a prophet speaks, it is so under the inspiration of the Spirit. But prophets aren't the only one who can speak or act under inspiration. The Bible itself is called the inspired word of God because it was written by those under the inspiration of God's Spirit. Not only by prophets, even those who have no idea what they're doing or saying, even those who act and speak from other motives, as did Caiaphas, and even a politician, well meaning or not, may speak under the inspiration of God. Inspiration, I said. Didn't you use that word in the speech? How he did. He said, I know that there is only the smallest measure of inspiration that can be taken from this devastation. He used it to introduction the prophecy, but he didn't intend to use it that way. Of course not. He used it to mean this for the purpose of inspiration, but the word means more than that, even in its most literal definition. Inspiration from the Latin inspirative means to be in breathed or blown upon by the wind, by the breath, by the spirit. That which is inspired in God breathed spirit blown, the what is defined as a supernatural divine influence upon the prophets, the apostle, and the sacred writers, or upon men, to enable them to communicate divine truth. So the word has a double meaning. Yes, just as the prophetic word of the Caiaphas, they had a double meaning. That which he intended to say, that which he didn't. What he didn't intend, that was the prophecy. So too with the Senate Majority Leader, the message intended to say was the following words are going to inspire you. And that's how most people would have understood it. Yes, said Prophet. But then there was the message he didn't intend to say, which was this: the following words to not come from my own initiative, but are of divine origin, the same origin and influence by which the prophet spoke. What you are about to hear is a prophetic message. So even the word inspiration came forth by inspiration. Yes, that as well as the prophetic address. What do you mean? I asked. When you send a letter, you address it. You identify the one to whom it's being sent. So to biblical prophecies after contain prophetic addresses. Introduction, identifying the one or ones to whom it's being sent, is there in Isaiah prophecy. The world has sent forth the word to Jacob, Israel, Ephraim, Samaria, or the people. So the prophecy is addressed to the people of Jacob, Israel, and Samaria. But now the same prophecy, the same message is about to be given, prophetically sent to a different people in a different nation, America. Yes. So then it has to readdress. The prophetic address has to be changed, exactly, he said. And so it was the majority leader omitted the original prophetic address that identified Israel as its recipient and put a different one in its place. There is a passage in the Bible from the Isaiah that I think speaks to all of us at times like this. Again, its message of two realms and double meaning. What the speaker meant to say was this: there's a passage in the Bible to bring comfort in time of crisis like this, and of course the Bible is filled with countless passages of comfort and encouragement. But Isaiah 9:10 was not one of them. No, said the prophet, not by a very long shot. So what he didn't mean to say but actually said was this: there is a message from scripture now given and speaking to America. The message is a prophetic word of warning sent to a nation that once knew God and appointed to be given and to speak at this particular time, the time when a nation is standing in danger of judgment. And then, after proclaiming the ancient vote, the Senate majority leader added on his own words: the bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with redstone. The fig trees have been felled, but we will replace them with the cedars. That is what we will do. That's what we will do. Just 6 words, but all that was needed to transform the vow. The longer was it an ancient vow of an ancient people, the longer was it merely a quotation. It was now the vow itself. It was now the vowing. The we of ancient Israel had transformed into the we of America. The act of national defiance was taking place not in the ancient capital of an ancient kingdom. It was now transpiring in Washington, D.C. The ancient judgment drama was now playing itself out on Capitol Hill, and then the Senate majority leader brought it to its logical conclusion. That is what we will do. We will rebuild and we will recover. It was the final restating of the vow. That is what we will do. In other words, America will do exactly as ancient Israel had done in its days of judgment, which is the word that, as in that is what we will do, can only refer to the ancient vow. In other words, America would continue in its defiance of God, in its departure from his ways, in its refusing to hear his call to return. Only it would do so all the more. America would follow the course of the ancient vow. So Isaiah 9:10 is now being transformed into national policy. You could say that. And what happened after the vow was spoken? I asked. Everyone was in full agreement, he replied. They had no idea what it was they had just heard. No, they had no idea what had happened. The which had gone forth from Capitol Hill was the proclamation that identifies a nation in a rebellion against God and the pronouncement of judgment upon that nation. And what happened after that? After that, it would all come true. It was a prophecy. It foretold the nation's future course. That's what we would do. America would choose the same course as that of ancient Israel, enact the same strategy, and walk in the same footsteps. It was all prophesied on the very morning after 9/11. He spoke of a cutting down of a tree. Did he know there was an actual tree cut down by the calamity at Ground Zero, and that it bore the same name as the fallen tree of Isaiah 9:10? No, he had no idea. His version translated it as a fig tree. Nevertheless, it was the biblical shakam, the fig mulberry tree, the sycamore, and even if he had known what he was saying, what it all meant, he could have had no idea that it was actually being fulfilled. When he proclaimed the prophecy on September 12, Ground Zero was still a disaster, died and cut off from the public, and it was only in later days that the story of the sycamore of Ground Zero would come out. And yet he spoke of it, nor could he have known on September 12 that one day a crane would lower a 20-ton stone onto Ground Zero, where the bricks had fallen. The would come true 3 years after he foretold it. And the cedar tree, I said, there's no way he could have known that a tree matching the biblical Eretz tree would actually be planted in the place of the fallen sycamore. The two would only happen years later, and only because someone decided to donate that particular tree. He couldn't have had any idea, and yet he prophesied it, that the one would be planted in place of the other. It was all prophesied the day after 9/11. It was all there and recorded in the annals of Congress for the whole nation to know. The nation would respond to its calamity just as ancient Israel had responded to its calamity. It would pursue a course of defiance on a path of judgment. I was silent. The prophet paused before saying anything more, allowing me time to process what I was hearing before showing me something else. Come, Nuriel, I want you to see something. He led me to the other side of the Capitol and pointed to a nearby building. Do you know what that is? I feel I should. What you are looking at is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, and yet there sits a much higher court than this by which nations are judged. According to biblical requirements, before a truth can be established or judgment passed in a court of law, the matter must be confirmed by two witnesses. One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of two or three witnesses that the matter shall be established. The principle of two witnesses applies first to the legal limb, but it can also be applied to the limb of nation. In the case of America, the Isaiah 10 connection would likewise be established by two witnesses. The Senate majority leader on the day of 9/11, he was the first witness, correct. And the second witness, the vice presidential candidate 3 years later on the anniversary of 9/11, both would speak the same words, correct, and both would bear witness of the joining of America to ancient Israel and of 9/11 to Isaiah 9:10, the one speaking of what would be and the other of what was dead. The vow was being fulfilled, and neither of the two, I added, had any idea what they were saying or what the other was saying or how their words were actually being fulfilled in reality. No, said the prophet, which only further compounds the weight of their testimony. And it was all set in motion on the very day after 9/11. Here, with a warning and the pronouncement of judgment, the prophecy was proclaimed to the nation from Capitol Hill, and it would all come true. There was silence. The revelation of Ninth Harbinger was finished, and I was still shaken. This obscure, mysterious prophecy had actually been proclaimed from the seat of the American government, and the speaker linked it all to 9/11. That, together with everything else, all the connections, all the twists and quirks, the reenactments, the replaying the ancient mystery manifesting in America, it left me shaken. I wanted to silence to try to take it all in, but I had a sense that if I didn't say something soon, he'd be gone and it would be the end. It was the last harbinger, so I broke the silence. I have a question. Yes, if America is following the same pattern as ancient Israel, we need the same signs, uttering the same words, reenacting the same acts, responding with the same response, yes, how can it escape suffering the same fate? He didn't answer, so again I spoke. And if the proclaiming of the vow was just the first stage of the judgment for Israel, and not the last, then what about America? What does the future hold?